Okay. Good morning, everyone. Guys, we're double filming today. We've got you guys who are going to get a longer, deeper dive, and we've got you guys, because you guys, you only want a minute, don't you? So we're going to give you 60 seconds. We're going to talk about the French shooting dead and armed suspect outside the synagogue. We're going to talk about armed police called to Stockton and how that, plays into the narrative that I've been talking about. And we're going to talk about this missile attack, this drone attack on Kharkiv that's been lasting for 16 hours. And as I understand it, this is the longest air attack that they've had in Ukraine. So the French police have shot dead an armed man outside a synagogue who was intent on burning it. Now, what we've got to look at is the increase in armed incidents in France. Now, this is just me speculating. I don't know whether there's any truth in this. But like a couple of months ago, I said we're going to see an increase in these armed attacks, in these people, with firearms doing these attacks. Now, what I said is, if you're a foreign country and you want to, do an attack on a country, you're not going to send your best guys with their tuxedos, their fancy watches, and their Aston Martins. You're just going to pay criminal gangs. You're going to pay these radicalists. So what the question I'm asking is are these attacks in France, are they sponsored by another country, or are they actually homegrown acts? Let me know what you think in the comments, guys, and I'll speak to you guys later. If you want the rest of this video, go check the link in the bio. Are we off? Right, guys, for you guys, you've got a little bit of more cognitive capacity that like to listen longer. You want a more deep dive. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, guys, right? And how I feel, from when I said this first happening, like months ago, I said, we're going to see an increase in these armed incidents. We're actually, we've definitely seen an increase now in these armed attacks. France is key at the moment. We've had 2 attacks or 2 incidents in like the space of a week. Let's not forget we had the we had the bust out of this guy called the Fly. He's still on the loose. They've not found him. He's probably left the country now, and if he's left the country, the France will struggle with jurisdiction to get him back. Anyway, so we've got that ongoing. Then there's been this, this incident outside a synagogue where, an armed man, that's all we know. And I'll put the link in the description to this video. All we know is an armed man who was intent on setting fire to the synagogue has been shot and killed. What was he armed with? We don't know. What were the, circumstances leading up to that? We don't know. But that's reality now. 2 incidents in France, in a very short length of time. Guys, are we going to get a 3rd incident over this weekend? I think there's a really high likelihood of this. Remember, France has put their head above the parapet now, and they've said, if Ukraine asks for help, we will send our troops. So that's made France, potentially a target from, hostile nations. So could it be beyond the realms of possibility that hostile nations are paying these criminal gangs, are radicalizing people online to commit attacks inside these countries? The reality is we don't know, we'll never know, and these statistics will never be put out. But it's very interesting that there's been 2 attacks in France at the same time as the conflict in Ukraine's escalating. And who said that they're going to come to Ukraine's aid? The French have. Now, from my sources on the ground, now in Ukraine, I'm going to skip to Ukraine and then I'll come back actually to the armed police in the UK. So in Ukraine at the moment, Kharkiv, it's suffered a huge missile attack, a huge drone attack. It's the longest lasting attack that they've had. Reports are between 15 hours and 17 hours. It's fog of war. Different reports are reporting different things. So that's what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. There's different reports. Some people are saying the Russians have been repelled. Some people are saying there's a huge Russian force, outside Sumny. We don't know. We don't know what the reality of the truth is on the ground. We will only know when these things move forwards. It's my speculation that Russia is going to try its best to encircle Kharkiv to cut it off. Now, from some of the people I've spoken to, in Ukraine, they're already saying that, the front line's been breached, and now it's only a matter of time before Zelensky asks Macron to send his troops in. Whether this happens or not, guys, We don't know. We don't know what type of timescale it is, but things are really escalating now. And I've said that this weekend is going to be key. So what we've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Guys, I feel on Monday morning we're going to be looking at things and things are going to look very different, very different indeed. Just the whole global economics, the whole global spectrum, and the political movements that's going to be done. Remember, we've got elections in the UK, we've got elections in the US. So all these sides want to look strong. They want to look like, they're in charge of these conflicts. So, could troops be pushed in? Absolutely. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that these troops that are already in Poland could go to Lviv, could get pushed forward to the Dnipro if things escalate. And things are escalating, guys, all right? So that's all we know at the moment about Ukraine. Things are escalating, huge attacks in Kharkiv, missile attacks. I can't see them putting troops on the ground. I can't see the Russians putting troops into Kharkiv. When you think about, a conventional battle space, you're looking at hills, rolling countryside, small towns, etc. When you're talking about big cities, you've got a 4D battle space. You've got all that 2D battle space. You've got up and you've got down. So it becomes very difficult. It takes a lot of manpower. It exhausts a lot of resources to go in there. So it makes no sense for the Russians to go into Kharkiv. What I think they'll do, and I've said this lots and lots of time, I think they'll just encircle it and move on to up to the Dnipro. So that's Kiev, guys, all right? Sorry, that's Ukraine. Also, and I'm just putting this out there now for those of you who, are trying to think about some reasoning why and how to control these areas. When you do these planning operations and these tactical, strategic operations, they say, right, guys, you don't need to subdue a population, which is essentially what you need to do. You don't need to go in there with all your soldiers. All you need to do is turn off their utilities. And a huge amount of people will do as they're told for their utilities being turned back on. You think about it, 95% of the population are civilians just wanting to go around their daily business. Now, they're the ones who are going to come out and protest, and they're the ones who are difficult to deal with because you can't be forceful with them because they're unarmed civilians. So how do you control them? Well, it's easy. You turn off their utilities, their water, their electric, their gas, and you say, right, guys, go back home and we'll turn your utilities back on. Guess what? Everybody will go back home, which is kind of a segue on what I'm thinking about these water issues that we're having in the UK at the moment. I don't know if there's anything to that. I know that the water situation in the UK is cascading, no pun intended, but we talked about that yesterday, and if there's more information that I think is relevant, I'll bring that out to you guys, all right? But that, so we've got that water situation that I'll talk about later if anything else comes out. But basically, that's how you control these big cities. You don't go into them, you encircle them, you turn off their utilities. If they're good, you turn them back on. It's easy. You don't use any tanks, you don't lose any soldiers, you don't expend any ammunition, and that's kind of how you deal with that. Anyway, guys, so moving forwards to the UK, remember how I said that the armed police are not capable, guys, and you know what? They're not, from what I've seen in Stockton, they're a lot lower than I thought they were. So let me just read you the article, guys. I'll put this in the bio. Pictures show moment, axe-wielding man arrested by armed police on Stockton Street. So basically, in Stockton, there's a man and he's running around with it just looks like an axe that you'd pick up from a hardware shop. It's like, I'd actually say it was more of a log splitter than an axe, but, that's just me being pedantic. And then you've got all these armed police with all their tactical gear on. I mean, my first thought is, if there's kids playing on that street, why don't one of the dads go out and say, oi mate, give me that, give him a smack and tell him to go home? That's how it should be dealt with, all right? That is literally how it should be dealt with. But we've come to a stage in the UK where I feel if one of the dads went out there, took the axe off him, gave him a punch, which is what I think he deserves, and all this fiasco would have been over with, I think then that dad would have been looking at assault, he'd have been looking at theft, He'd have been looking at, you know, they'd have probably thrown in some woke charge as well, like not letting the man express himself because the man would have claimed he was an axe dancer or something, you know. And that's what I fear is happening in the UK now. People just don't want to get involved because they're scared of the, you know, they're scared of what's going to happen to them. But it's only the law-abiding people who are scared of what's going to happen to them because they're like, oh, right, well, I don't want to get arrested for theft, for assault. I'll just let the armed police come and deal with it. So from what I can gather, there were 4 armed police, you know, and they've got, I mean, they're pretty well tooled up. He's got like I think it's an AR platform, and I think he's got a Glock pistol. So, you know, they're well armed. And for one guy with an axe, how are they going to react if, like, there's 2 guys with axes? Does that mean they're going to send 8 people? You know, the carnage that, you know, one man with an axe has caused, and he's not even swinging it, he's just threatening. If a real incident happens with real people with real firearms, these police are not going to be able to deal with it. Absolutely not. You know, they're stood on the streets now looking cool with all their tactical swag, but I can guarantee you guys, all right, as soon as people start shooting, they're going to run for cover and they're going to be straight on the phone to the military. Straight away, guys, all right, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, I'm just going to do a little bit of a straight bloke critiquing of this police officer. So I'll put the link to this article in, I think I can, yeah. I'll put the link to this article in the bio, in the description. And what I'm going to say is the first thing I noticed about this guy, so he's got 2 drop leg holsters on. In fact, one's not, he's got a drop leg holster and a drop leg pouch or something. It's a magazine pouch. Now, the first thing I noticed is the straps are too tight. So what you can tell is he's probably never done any running in that. And the buckles on on the strap on his left leg where he's got his spare magazines, it's in the wrong place. So what that's going to do is if he has to run anywhere or if he has to walk anywhere further than 500 meters, that's going to rub on his leg. And if he'd have done any exercising at all, if he'd have done any training, any intense training where you train to failure, he would know that buckle it's just annoying and it will give him blisters. So I can tell straight away by looking at him, you know, he's not well trained. But, you know, guys, that's just me. That's just my observations. I could probably go more into it about, you know, his gloves, his face mask, you know, but I don't know what their standard operating procedures are in the police. They might have to wear gloves, they might have to do other things, but I can tell you now, guys, that buckle on his leg will cause a blister. I can tell he's not done any running in that kit, so I can tell he's not well trained, because to train on these weapon systems, you have to train till failure. You have to train until you start making mistakes. And I know what people are going to say, but, oh, you should never make mistakes. Yes, that's how you get better. You learn and learn and learn, and you push yourself to your extreme, and then you know where you can't go any further. It's all right being able to, you know, make these awesome shots when, you know, you're in perfect condition, you're not tired, you're not wet, you're not hungry, you've not just had to run. That's fine. But the reality is, as things progress on the streets in the UK, I feel there's going to be armed attacks in the UK, and these police officers, they're just not going to be able to deal with it, guys. So, guys, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us out when you do that. And I will be doing another video later on today. I'm going to try and get a more deep dive into what's happening in Ukraine, because at the moment, there's just the media, everything that's going on, it's just, you know, there's total confliction. One media source is saying the Russians have been pushed back. I'm speaking to people who are saying that, you know, the Russians are ready for a massive attack. I'm listening to, you know, there's all sorts of stuff going on. So I will try and get clarification for you guys on what's happening, and I'll do a video on that later on today. But yeah, guys, enjoy your Friday. Make sure you've got some bottled water.